Welcome. Looks like we're going to have a bigger group this time. That's why I have a microphone. Anyway, my name is Michael Fiore. A lot of people think I'm a Smith because I am a Smith, but it's my mom's side of the family. My mom had to leave, but I'm the fourth generation of Smith's Gardentown. This is our 75th anniversary year. So we actually started back in 1949. My great grandfather started it. And if you have time later, we do have some historic pictures on the wall over there where you can kind of walk through time and see where we started off. Because before all of your time, back in 1949, we started on Beverly Street. And we were on Beverly Street from 1949 to about 1969. And then in 69, we moved out to Kemp Street. A lot of you might remember that Kemp Street location. It was there when I was a kid. So we operated on Kemp Street from 69 to about 99. So where Best Buy is now across from the mall, that was our location there. And that was our retail location. This out here was the farm. So that's why it says Smith's Farms on the front of the building. This was our grow range where we would grow the plants and then we would truck them over to Kemp Street and sell them at retail there. We now have combined those facilities. So when Best Buy wanted to come to town, they bought our property and we moved the retail location out here. And we are now one of the few remaining grower retailers in the country. So that's a facility that's going to grow their own plants on site and then just bring them out to the retail area. There are quite a few grower retailers that exist in the US, but most of them have separate off-site grow facilities like we used to have. So it's a really kind of a unique place where we get to grow the plants here and then bring them up front. The majority of the bedding plants, so our annuals and perennials that you will buy here, were grown right here. And also all of our poinsettias and our mums. And some of the house plants that we grow are ferns and things we grow here as well. So we're gonna, I'll quickly point out, we have our poinsettia wrapping station here. So today we're featuring poinsettias, obviously, and this is one of the services that we do. We're one of the few places that still do this, where we'll do a full foil wrap and bow, customizable on our beautiful poinsettias. So you can let us pick the colors for you, or you can pick out your plant and then pick out which ribbon and color foil that you want. Makes a really nice gift or just decoration inside your house. So it's a little crowded in here. We're gonna head back out into the greenhouses. So in here, these are the newest greenhouses on the facility. These were built in 2007. You can see they're a little bit higher roof. We also have this shade cloth, but these things are very automated and sophisticated, so they're all controlled by a greenhouse monitoring and control system. There's a lot of moving parts here, so the shade cloth will open and close. That shade cloth also doubles as a radiant barrier, so in the winter time, it'll open during the day and then close up in the evening and kind of help keep that heat down here closer to the plants. The roofs will open and close, the side walls open and close, and we also have some circulating fans that will move air, and then of course our large heaters in here when we need to heat, and that's all controlled by that computerized system and a weather station that's up on the roof. It even knows when it starts raining, it'll close those roofs down so that way the customers aren't getting rained on in here. If it gets too windy, it will also close those roofs down a little bit so that way they're not getting caught in the wind. So it's pretty cool and sophisticated system, but it's also very energy efficient compared to the older style greenhouses. So our energy bill is much lower in this range of greenhouses than it is compared to our older style greenhouses in the back that you'll see. All right, this next spot, we're gonna kind of crowd around those carts of poinsettias because I have a lot to explain over there. So try to come on down closer where you can get a good look at these. And then you may want to look at them when we walk back up too. We're going to walk right by them again on the way up when we finish the tour. We've got 34 varieties of poinsettias that we grew this year. And that by no means are all the varieties that are out there. There are actually several hundred patented varieties of poinsettias in existence right now. And it seems crazy, but these are all, they've all been developed through plant breeding processes. So what they do is sometimes it'll happen through a natural mutation. You're growing a bunch of red poinsettias and all of a sudden one of them's spotted. That was a natural mutation that occurred. Then they would try to then take cuttings off of it, propagate it, and see if it's going to be a stable mutation that can then be replicated at a large scale. Other times they will find different poinsettias that have different characteristics that they want, whether that be color or size or longevity or disease resistant or whatever it is, and then they will crossbreed them by cross-pollinating them and then taking the seeds, and then they'll plant out hundreds and hundreds or thousands of seedlings, and then out of those thousands of seedlings they might find one or two that have the characteristics that they want, and then they will try to then mass produce those, clone them, replicate them. So they're developing a new strain of poinsettia can take anywhere from 5 to 10 years usually. So there's a lot of work that goes into this. So then once they do find one that they like, they will then patent it and then start mass producing it for growers like us to grow. So we don't actually do any of that breeding process, but what we do is, I said I'm sorry. We go to these poinsettia trials is what it's called. So we will go to these areas where they're growing all of those hundreds of different types of poinsettias. And for example, they might have 200 types of red poinsettia. And so we'll go through there and we look for the characteristics that we want, and then we'll choose the varieties that we want to grow. And then each year we kind of curate that list and change it a little bit. If there's something that doesn't sell well for us because the customers don't like it, or if there's something that doesn't grow well for us, then we will cut that out of production for the following year and then put in some new ones. This is a brand new variety for this year that we've added in. This is called Sparkling Rouge. This is not painted. This is actually how it grows. We do not paint any poinsettias here. I'm a purist when it comes to that. So everything you see here is just how it has naturally been bred to grow. And that's part of the Poinsettia series, which is a more compact variety of poinsettia that has smaller leaves and bracts. You'll hear me talk about that word bract. That's because it's B-R-A-C-T. What you see here, this is not the flower of the poinsettia. The flowers are actually these little tiny things down in the middle, about the size of a BB, and these here are modified leaves that actually turn color, and those are the floral bracts. I'll point out a couple of different varieties for you that some people may not know about. This is one that's been newer over the last 2 or 3 years. This is called Autumn Leaves. I love Autumn Leaves because it can be dual purpose. This is one of the earlier ones to get color in the fall. So it actually colors up nicely in November, so this can be used because of its colors in your fall decorating and also for Christmas. So that's a really cool one. Christmas Beauty Queen is very nice. It's got kind of that speckled, not speckled, I don't know how you would call it. It almost looks like it's been airbrush painted on there. And then some of these varieties are a lot smaller, so we grow them in smaller pots. These are called Christmas Mouse, so mouse red and mouse pink. They've got rounded bracts, almost like a mouse ear, if you can see that. So we do look for things like that. Whereas otherwise, to the other extreme, you'll have some that'll have very pointed bracts, almost like a maple leaf. So that one there is Red Elf that has multiple points on those bracts. This one's been out for a while, but the Winter Rose, you know, they grow like that. Very, very cool poinsettia there. But we've got a whole bunch to see. I will recommend that when we come back up front, you guys take your time and look through there, see which varieties you like. And then we do have them for sale in the tropical greenhouse over there. I'll hit your head on this. Put my hand on. If you guys can kind of scoot up here, I just want to yell at everybody for a minute before we go in. Just don't slip off the sides. Yeah, don't hit your head on that. So this is kind of the line between our grow facility and our retail facility, the older style greenhouses that were built in the 70s and 80s versus the 2000s style greenhouses. You can see it's quite a lot different. The other thing that's significant about this spot is this is a rainwater collection area. So we catch all the rainwater that comes off of these greenhouse roofs. It hits the alley, then goes that way, and then hits some collection basins and pipes, which will take that rainwater out to our ponds out front. So in a 1-inch rain event, we can catch about 500,000 gallons of water that goes to our ponds. This also catches all of our overflow when we are watering in either one of these greenhouses. We've got French drains underneath all those benches that will catch the excess water and bring it out here to the alley, which ends up in our ponds out front. And that's why our ponds, they might get low during a drought, but we never run out of water up there completely. If you guys can just line up along this aisle and I'll be in the middle. And you guys are welcome to take pictures. There's no secrets back here. I have been to places where they do the breeding and they will not let you take pictures there because it is a very secretive process when they are developing new strains and new cultivars and varieties. So obviously pretty warm in here. Poinsettias are tropical plants. They originate in Mexico and they like that warm temperatures. They do not want to be outside. If temperatures are below 60 degrees, they are not happy. So we keep these greenhouses quite warm. It's pretty ironic that a plant that doesn't like cold weather became our Christmas flower, but that's why you've got to be careful when you're transporting these home. And that's why we have such a big advantage here, because we don't have to put them in trucks that might get cold on the road and transport them long distances. We just put them on carts and go from one greenhouse to another when we're ready to sell them. So in here, there's a few things I want to point out about the greenhouses themselves. So first of all, we have big fans down. Can you guys hear me down there? Okay, thanks. We've got big fans down at that end. So those are what we call extraction fans. So they're pulling air out of the greenhouse and we draw air in from this end, from the south end. So as we pull that air in and pull the air out the other end, it helps keep it cooler in here because it gets very, very hot very quickly. Imagine on a hot summer day when you go to the grocery store and you turn your car off, all the windows are closed, it gets really hot really fast. It gets much hotter much more quickly in a greenhouse because we have so much solar radiation coming in here. So that the air will get really hot really fast. So on a hot summer day with all the fans running, we are exchanging the air completely out of this greenhouse every minute. So there's a lot of calculations that go into that. If we have, say, 100,000 cubic feet of air in here, then we need 10 fans that are capable of moving 10,000 cubic feet per minute in order to exchange that air out of here quickly. It's very important that we don't lose power, not only in the winter, but in the summer as well, because if we lose power on a hot, sunny summer day, it could spike up to 200 plus degrees in here within 30 minutes to an hour. Ask me how I know, because it's actually happened before. It actually got so hot in here that our PVC pipe, the glue melted and our joints started coming apart on our water lines in here. So in here we've also got, it's hard to see, but we've got little hoses with little spikes on them that go into each one of these pots. So that's one of the ways that we can automate the irrigation. We do the same thing for hanging baskets in here. We can water these on a sprinkler timer and allow us to automate the watering a little bit, because this is a very labor intensive business. We have to try to figure out ways to save our workers time wherever we can so they can focus on other tasks. The other thing to point out about these greenhouses is the roof above us. This is a polyethylene plastic film. And this is 150 feet long. Each house is 20 feet wide. These roofs will last us anywhere from 4 to 5 years before they need to be replaced. This is a double layer of polyethylene plastic, and then we inflate the area between those two layers of plastics. That's why it kind of looks like pillows hanging down. If you look at it from the top, it looks like one giant pillow on the top. What that does is it makes it more resistant to wind. It's very windy outside today, but you see this plastic isn't moving all that much, and that's because it's inflated and kept tight that way. That also makes it more resistant to hail, so the hailstones all the way up to about golf ball size will just bounce right off of this greenhouse film. If we have hail more than a golf ball size, we're in trouble here. That hasn't happened to us in many, many years, but you never know when it could happen again. And then we will move to our next spot if you'll follow me down. Down here on the right, you'll see one variety that is not going to make the cut for next year because they're just ugly. They didn't do well for us. So that's one that we will replace for next year. Okay, once again, line up along that wall there. We'll let everybody file in here. All right, so a little bit about poinsettias. They all start off green. If you had been in here about 3 or 4 weeks ago, it was just wall-to-wall green. All the poinsettias look almost identical. You can squeeze on in when they start off. So if you look at the lower leaves, that's the color they start off at. But what causes them to bloom? What's our big secret that causes them to bloom, right? Well, there is no secret. They will do this naturally as the seasons change. When the days get shorter and the nights get longer, these plants are called photoperiodic plants. There's quite a few plants that are photoperiodic, such as mums are a similar one that will bloom according to the seasons. Now, the mechanism that causes them to bloom is they have specific proteins and enzymes that will trigger them to bloom, but those proteins and enzymes are degraded by light. So for them to build up to the level that will trigger them to bloom, they have to have uninterrupted nighttime for about 12 to 13 hours where they will build up to the point that'll cause them to bloom. So uninterrupted nighttime means they can't have any light on them at night. We used to try to grow these at the Kemp Street location, but because there's traffic there, headlights going by, and when they built the mall across the street and had those parking lot lights up, that was too much light at night and our poinsettias wouldn't properly bloom. That's why it's very difficult for homeowners to get poinsettias to bloom in their house. If you were to keep this poinsettia from one year to the next, it's going to turn green in spring and summer again, but the only way you can get them to bloom is if you give them total darkness at night for 12 to 13 hours and then bright light again during the day, which this is what happens naturally in the fall as those nights get longer. We have to be very careful. That's why these greenhouses are so far from the highway. When my grandfather built them back here, is because he wanted it to be very, very dark in here at night. There are also no lights in this whole greenhouse facility because we don't want anyone to accidentally leave the lights on at night. I even have to be careful if I come in at night to check heaters or something. If I have a flashlight, I have to be careful not to shine it onto the plants during October and November because that can actually cause them to get delayed in their bloom process. So they're very sensitive to light at night, and that's why you've got to have a specific area to be able to grow them. What else? These heaters are natural gas heaters. We have to keep it quite warm in here at night, obviously. And so it costs a lot of money to heat greenhouse space. We might run through anywhere from $8,000 to $12,000 of natural gas per month on a really cold month. So because it costs so much to heat these greenhouses, we try to fit as many plants in here as possible. So this table right here is about 130 feet long. And you'll notice that each greenhouse, if you're trying to access the plants over here, how do you get to them, right? Each greenhouse only has one aisle space, but because these tables are on rollers, we can now move this aisle over and access the plants over here. So even though this table weighs upwards of 2 tons with all the plants on it, just a simple handle with a pipe running down to the other end allows us to use that leverage to move those plants over and access different parts of the greenhouse. All right, we got one more stop. It's a little quieter in here. I don't have to yell. Because I still have 2 more tours after this. Any guesses of how many poinsettias were in that last building? 1,000? Okay. 2,500? Anybody else?
5,000.
So in that side, there were about 6,500 poinsettias in there. And then on the first side where we started, there's an additional about 3,500. So in total, we grow about 10,000 poinsettias per year. But that's not all that we grow. We actually grow about 600,000 plants every year out of this facility. And it all starts in here. This is our potting room. It's original to the facilities built in the 70s out here. And everything starts in here. So we are what's called a finishing nursery. So we buy in young plants. About 85% of what we grow comes from plugs, is what we call them. So plugs are going to be either someone took a cutting and stuck it in substrate until it rooted into a tiny little rooted cutting, or they're going to be seedlings where someone, seeded a tray, and then once they sprouted to a certain size, what they do is they will ship those to us via FedEx. And so there are different nurseries that are young plant nurseries, and they specialize in supplying finishing nurseries like us. So they will ship those young plants to us. They come from all over the Western Hemisphere. We get some out of Canada, all over the US, West Coast, Midwest, East Coast, South. We also get some of our young plants come from Mexico and Guatemala and El Salvador, just depending on what we're growing and which of those nurseries specialize in those plants that we need. Because there's a lot of logistics that goes into this, we use a brokerage service. So we tell our broker what plants we want and when we want them, and then they source them from all those places all over the Western Hemisphere and get them to us at the appropriate time to plant them. Our young plants, when they come in these plug trays, this is a 72 count, so it's gonna have 72 young plants in here. Some of them are much smaller cells. We'll have up to 250 young plants in one tray, just depending on which plant it is. And when those get here, we then pot them up to a larger size, and I'll explain how we do all that. But they will take anywhere, a fast turnaround plant for us is gonna be from plug to retail size in 5 to 6 weeks. Some of our slower plants could take up to 14 to 18 weeks to be ready for retail size. So there's a lot of planning that goes into that. we are always thinking well into the future back here. So our springtime back here is January and February. That's when we do the majority of our spring planting to get those spring plants ready for you. If you don't realize, this is a very seasonal business. We actually do 25% of our revenue for the whole year happens in the month of April. So it's a very, very busy time. If you ever come here in April, it's just wall-to-wall customers. Come in here in January up front, there's not a single customer in the store. But back here, it's practically April back here in January because we're planting so much and getting ready for that production cycle. So when those plants get in here, we actually have a separate crew that works in the back as opposed to our retail crew in the front. The retail crew back here is usually about 8 or 9 people. And what they will do is we'll have some people that will be stacking our pots into the trays. And then they'll move over here where the trays will go through this machine and they'll get filled up with soil. Let me pause and talk about our soil a little bit. This is a flat roof facility. We used to actually keep all the raw ingredients for the soil up on the roof. And there used to be a cement mixing trailer inside of that building. So we would take all those raw ingredients, dump them through the roof down into that cement mixing trailer and mix our own soil. If you can imagine being up on the roof in January and February and doing that, I don't know what's in my mouth. Not a fun time. But we found out later that up in Canada where they harvest the peat moss, they will actually custom blend our soils for us to our specifications. So we choose always the highest ingredients, highest quality ingredients that go into our soils. And they will custom blend those for us and they put them in, you can't really see, but through that door there's some really large what are called super sacks, and those sacks will hold 75 cubic feet of soil. And then they stack them 2 sacks per pallet on a semi-truck, and we get about 24 pallets in a semi-truck from Canada. When that truck arrives here, it costs me about $13,000 per truckload of soil, and we could be using anywhere from 10 to 14 truckloads of soil per year just for the plants that we grow here. When we take those super sacks, they go into a hopper, they go into a hoist and go into that hopper, and then they go in through a conveyor belt into this machine, which we call the dirt machine. It's technically called a flat filling machine. So once we have our pots and trays assembled, they will go through this machine. They come out the other side filled with soil, leveled off and ready for planting, in which case they would head over to this assembly line here. So typically when we're in full production mode, we're gonna have 2 or 3 people assembling the trays. We're gonna have 1 or 2 people putting the soil into the trays here. And then we're gonna have people standing here. And as the conveyor belt goes by, they're taking the young plants and potting them into the larger pot size here. Once it reaches here, this is called a watering tunnel. They're gonna go into there and they're gonna get their first bath and come out the other side. I'm gonna speed it up. Ready to be taken out into the greenhouses and planted. So it's a lot like factory work back here. Like I said, it's a different crew. They come in at 8:30 in the morning. They have a first break at 10:30. They have a 12 o'clock lunch. They have a second break at 2:30. They punch out at 5. If you've worked retail, you know you don't get that type of scheduled type of work. But back here, because it's a lot more like factory work, we're able to do that. And almost knocked that over. Where'd that come from? It's only been there for 50 years. So when they're running in full capacity with a full crew, they can plant anywhere from 10 to 15,000 plants per day back here and get them out into the respective greenhouses. We've got about 4 acres of covered greenhouse space. And so some of it's back here, some of it's out here. We only saw part of it today. Depending on what we're growing and when we're growing, that's when you will